The socialist leaders of the Democrat Party, Bernie Sanders and AOC, held a town hall on CNN, but we're going to see something rather interesting. We're going to see Caitlin Collins perform a random act of journalism that actually makes AOC melt down, and we're also going to see a Republican ask a question that completely stumps Bernie Sanders. But before we get to these clips, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on this video so we can break through the algorithms. Here we go.
They refuse. I've never seen people who hate working so much in my life. I mean, genuinely, they won't even pick up the phone. They won't. If I were Mike Johnson, you should be in that office negotiating with Hakeem Jeffries every damn day until we reopen this government. And any day that you don't do that is a failure. It is a failure. And until there is accountability for people who refuse to work, then we're going to continue to be in this cycle. So, you know, in the Senate, the Senate Majority Leader is John Thune. He should be negotiating with Chuck Schumer. President Trump should be having congressional leaders in the White House. Do you see that every day? No, you don't, because they're playing golf and they're going to Mar-a-Lago, and the House and Republicans in the House have been on vacation for weeks now. We are here in Washington, D.C. We are ready to work. We are ready to strike a deal. We're not here to just be my way and the highway about everything. But what we're also not going to accept is the complete collapse of the American healthcare system, so that just because the Republican Party has decided to take 1 million federal workers hostage.
Can I ask you on that? Because you before have said a government shutdown is like hostage taking when it comes to paychecks, because you came into office actually during a government shutdown, the longest in U.S. history. So what would you say to Republicans who say you're doing the hostage taking this time?
Once again, pick up the phone. They need to pick up the phone. And it's not hostage taking if they refuse to clock in, right? We're all clocked in. We're all clocked in to do the job. They're not even here. They're not even here. And so it's not hostage taking as much as the fact is they refuse to show up and do the job.
Once again, the law is in the Senate, they need 60 votes. They don't have 60 votes. They've got 53 or maybe 52. That means you have to sit down and talk to the other side. It is not complicated. They are not doing that.
Yeah, each side is saying that no one's talking. And speaking of what's happening in the Senate, Senator Sanders, this next question is for you. It's from Rohan Naval, who is joining us here tonight. Thank you so much for being here. He said he's a Republican and a student at American University, and that you intern for the conservative group Americans for Tax Reform. What's your question?
Yes, thank you for your time, Senator. How do you think this shutdown reflects on Chuck Schumer's leadership?
Well, I think it reflects more on Mike Johnson's leadership and President Trump's leadership. This is a leadership which said it's okay to give well, how do you feel? You tell me. Think it's a good idea to give $1 trillion in tax breaks to the richest people in the country and then make massive cuts to health care for working class people?
I think Chuck Schumer has voted for continuing resolutions 13 times in the last 4 years, and he has the opportunity to vote for one again, but he's refusing to come to the table.
Well, I think, look, as I have said, there are 53 Republicans in the Senate, correct?
Yes.
They need 60. What does that mean? It means you have to talk to the other side. Mike Johnson is not talking. John Thune is not talking. President Trump is not talking. That is the problem.
Well, they say their position is reopen the government and then we'll talk. Who changes their strategy first? Who's going to blink first, I think, is a question a lot of people have.
Well, I certainly hope this is not a game. I mean, a lot of lives are at stake in terms of our federal employees who are hurt, in terms of tens of millions of people who are going to suffer from these health care proposals. So I hope the Republicans do the right thing. Come to the damn table and talk.
Can I ask you, Representative Ocasio-Cortez, on that? Because we actually heard from House Speaker Mike Johnson today on Chuck Schumer. He said he's supporting the shutdown to prevent a primary challenge from his left wing. Do you think that's what's driving Senator Schumer here?
No, absolutely not. It's such an insane suggestion. And in fact, it speaks to how desperate they are. This claim has been, Mike Johnson's been saying this, John Thune's been saying this. They are saying this because they are refusing to do their job. They're grasping for straws. They're trying to make this about political tabloids and political intrigue and horse races, exactly the kinds of things that people are sick of in this country. We're sick of it. We're sick of talking about these horse races, and we're sick of leaders who only want to spend their time talking about that instead of talking about real issues that affect our lives. Instead of talking about healthcare, instead of talking about wages, instead of talking about having air that's drinkable, air that's breathable and water that's drinkable. And it is honestly astonishing to me that the Speaker of the House would waste his time on something so inane and silly instead of actually worrying about his own constituents who are suffering at the hands of his leadership.
But are you saying that Senator Schumer should not be worried about a primary challenge from you?
All right.
No.
Let me jump in on this one.
This is what we're talking about.
That's exactly what we're talking about.
This is what we're
you
talking
have a country that is falling apart. We had a housing crisis, a healthcare crisis, an education crisis, massive income and wealth inequality, a corrupt campaign finance system, and the media says, "Oh, you're going to run. What are you going to run for?" Nobody cares. She'll run more towards
Nobody cares.
It's the House Speaker and President Trump and the Vice President saying it.
Right.
Pardon?
Well, of course, they're saying it to deflect attention away from the real issues.
Exactly.
And here, let me tell you what the real issue is. Let's see if CNN talks about it. We're living in the richest country in the history of the world, right? All right, you tell me why we're the only nation not to guarantee health care to all people, the only nation not to guarantee paid family and medical leave, why we have a $7.25 an hour minimum wage, why we have 800,000 people sleeping out on the street, why we have a president who denies the reality of climate change, why we have oligarchs on top who have more and more power every day. Let's talk about that issue, not her own political future. She'll decide that.
So the first thing I want to point out is notice how AOC didn't say no when she was asked about primarying Chuck Schumer. Okay, she said, see, this is what we're talking about. We're trying to obfuscate from the real issues. Yeah, but are you going to primary Chuck Schumer because you want his Senate seat? I thought you guys were on the same side. Oh, that's right. You're a socialist, self-avowed socialist, okay? So that, of course, is why Chuck Schumer is shutting down the government at this point in time. It's because he's afraid of the rabid leftists in New York City coming for his job, okay? And AOC and Bernie Sanders can say, oh, this is not the real issue all they want, but we know exactly that it is, okay? But also you have AOC out there saying, yeah, the Republicans hate to work. I've never seen anyone hate to work as much as them, which of course is laughable coming from the lady who likes to pose in front of empty fields simply for photo ops. Okay, so don't give me any of this bullcrap. The House of Representatives already passed bill. And the Senate has voted on the bill 9 times since the shutdown started, but the Democrats keep voting no, all right? Because they're the ones actually holding people hostage. And speaking of that phrasing, AOC actually used those words as well against the Democrats when they were doing the shutdown when she was actually sworn in, right? So there's another random piece of journalism done by Caitlin Collins in that instance, okay? But Bernie Sanders, when faced with a question from a Republican, has to, of course, go off the rails, all right? The simple question is, how do you think that Chuck Schumer is faring as leader of the Senate during the shutdown? And Bernie Sanders tries to pass the buck off to Mike Johnson. Well, don't forget, in the House of Representatives, the bill was passed. Mike Johnson did his job, but Chuck Schumer is not doing his, or rather, is he, all right, at the behest of all of the radical leftists. But of course, you have the Republican shaking his head because he doesn't like Bernie Sanders' answer. So Bernie Sanders decides to, of course, confront him personally. Well, do you think we should be giving tax cuts to billionaires? And what's the Republicans' response? I think that Chuck Schumer and the Democrats should just go ahead and vote for the continuing resolution just so we can get government back open, because they've done this already several times over the last 4 years. Only now they're choosing to be obstructionists. But this sets off Bernie Sanders. Before, of course, he has to kind of slink back and say, I'm reclaiming my time. And now, of course, he's going to start to go off on the healthcare crisis, the housing crisis, the mental health crisis, the homelessness crisis, all right? What caused all of these crises? Okay, the housing crisis in places like California and New York, where they don't really give out new permits to build, and therefore the prices of existing homes skyrocket. Yeah, that could be part of the issue. Oh, and once again, those are Democrat locales. And of course, the homeless crisis. Why do we have a homeless crisis? Oh, it's because we've shut down a lot of the mental health institutions where we used to send people, and now, of course, we just allow them to live on the streets. And in many blue states and cities, they actually give out free drugs and drug paraphernalia, which, of course, exacerbates the problem, right? So that, of course, is what's really happening happening with the homelessness crisis. But of course, they're going to bring up the healthcare crisis. We're the only country in the world who doesn't have free healthcare for everyone. Yeah, but how's that healthcare going in other countries? In places like Canada, right? Per capita in America, we have 3.5 times the amount of MRI machines. And in America, you can actually get a hip replacement surgery in about 3 to 6 months versus Canada, where it takes 2 years. All right. Not to mention in places like Canada that have supposedly this wonderful socialized healthcare medicine service, right? They still have private health insurance because it was getting too backlogged and people were tired of waiting in lines. And also they introduced and have been pushing assisted unaliving in Canada because apparently the healthcare costs are just too much. So you can get rid of that older generation that paid into the system their entire life. Now it frees up money for the new illegal immigrant class that you're allowing into your country. But of course, let's not also talk about Obamacare. Why do we really have a healthcare crisis in this country? It's because our costs have gone up dramatically for the people who actually pay into the healthcare system to take care of those that don't. That's the real healthcare crisis that we're having in this country. But the Democrats don't want to admit it. So what is this shutdown really all about? It's about the Democrats trying to roll back every single cut in spending that Donald Trump and Doge have made over the last several months, including, of course, giving health care to illegal immigrants. And even though Bernie Sanders is going to rail about tax cuts for billionaires, I could give two craps about that because I think everyone deserves a tax cut, even the people who pay the most tax out of all the Americans in this entire country. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and say hi to your mom for me. Do you like t-shirts? Of course you do. And now you can support the channel by buying an Angry Teacher t-shirt designed by me, Angry Teacher. So if you like America, if you like freedom, if you like liberty, then go ahead and click the link in the description where all designs, of course, are 100% mother approved. So enjoy yourself and find something you like today.